But it was one thing to go to the negotiating table, another to reach a settlement. The Irish delegation, under the leadership of De Valera, veteran of the 1916 Rising, sailed for London. For them, nothing less than a 32-county republic would suffice, an independent Ireland with the British connection cut.
Their room for manoeuvre was extremely restricted. They were effectively negotiating for a Dáil which had proclaimed itself a republic, had already proclaimed itself a republic, and done so on the basis of the 1916 republic sanctified in blood. There was no way they could have returned with a republic from the negotiations.
Lloyd George had to keep the Conservatives and Unionists in his coalition government, so any settlement had to be acceptable to them.
He had to get a guarantee of special treatment for Ulster that would be satisfactory to the Ulstermen themselves, and thus to the Unionist Party as a whole. And he had to get a guarantee that the integrity of the empire would be upheld. That is to say, in effect, that the Irish would take some sort of an oath of allegiance to the king as head of the empire.
In Downing Street, the crowds watched and waited. The negotiations at number 10 were clearly going to be difficult. On the street, they prayed as Lloyd George was offering De Valera, in the context of a divided Ireland, limited independence under the Crown. To De Valera and the other Irish delegates, both were completely unacceptable. A divided Ireland still in the British Empire, a betrayal of the Republican ideal and the martyrs of 1916. He returned to Dublin for discussions in the Dáil. The proposals were, of course, unacceptable. Yet another delegation left for London. Why De Valera, their most able negotiator, was not amongst them remains controversial. These negotiations dragged on for 8 weeks. An impasse had been reached.
Well, after long and exhausting negotiations, the Irish delegates in early December, under instructions and pressure from Dublin, were once again beginning to revise and to draw up new conditions and to effectively go back over old ground, when abruptly and dramatically, on the 5th of December, Lloyd George presented them with a stark choice, effectively, take the terms now or be responsible for the collapse of the negotiations.
He pulled out of his pocket 2 envelopes, both addressed to Sir James Craig in Belfast, and announced to the Irish delegation that he had that night to send one of these envelopes to Sir James Craig. One of them said that articles of agreement had been signed. The other said that Sinn Féin had refused to come into the empire. If I send this letter, he said, it is war, and war within 3 days. And he said, there's a train standing at Euston Station with steam up. There's a destroyer waiting at Holyhead. Mr. Shakespeare is ready. This letter must go. It must go by 10 o'clock. I must have your reply by then. A theatrical gesture, but the pressure put on the Irish representatives was enough. They signed.
And they were given no opportunity to refer the matter back to a plenary session of the Dáil or in any other way effectively to procrastinate. It was signed now or face the consequences in war.
The signatories had accepted independence within the empire and the partition of Ireland. When the Irish delegates posed for Pathé Cameraman the following day, their smiles were deceptive. Michael Collins had already reflected the previous night.
Think, what have I got for Ireland? Something which she has wanted these past 700 years. Will anyone be satisfied at the bargain? Will anyone?
The treaty was a great disappointment because we had been working up, as we thought, to an Irish Republic, and the treaty didn't give it to us. Worse than that, the partition, which cut off 6 counties, was, I think, the deciding factor for the Republican side.
Suddenly everybody realised that the 6 counties, the little bit in the north of Ireland was handed over, still held by the British.
Lloyd George came out of the negotiations with all he wanted. Northern Ireland was still part of the United Kingdom, the Irish still in the British Empire, the Conservatives still in the coalition.
I believe Lloyd George played his cards as effectively as he could within his own terms of reference, which was to get a solution acceptable to the British cabinet.
In the short run, Lloyd George did solve the Irish problem, insofar as he took Ireland out of the immediate arena of British politics for nearly 50 years, until 1969, in fact.
The British Army began to withdraw. The Irish Army and government took over. The Irish problem at last seemed solved.
It was the result of a series of compromises. Other solutions were impossible. In it, I think there was no basis of permanency, no basis of stability.
However, the immediate cost of the settlement was to be paid in Ireland. Although most Irishmen in the south were glad to see the English go, they were divided over the treaty. Some thought they could expect no more. Others argued that it was a betrayal, that 100 years of Republican struggle should have ended with a divided Ireland and Irishmen giving loyalty to an English king.